Greetings, greetings, Cardinal Sin Nation. It is I, Cardinal Sin. And tonight on Into the Fringe, we have a very special guest, Mr. Albert Rosales. And we are going to be checking out some cases from his book, Humanoid Encounters the Others Among Us, 1990 to 1994. Born in Cuba, Albert Rosales migrated to the U.S. in 1966. He had several unusual incidents as a young man while living in Cuba, and such incidents continued as an adult in the U.S. Rosales became interested in unusual phenomena and UFOs at a young age, but soon directed his focus to the crux of the phenomena, the humanoids, entities, extraterrestrials, UFO-nauts, etc. He began collecting data on such encounters from worldwide sources in the late 80s. He has a current database of close to 30,000 entries, which is updated and corrected daily, and has published 16 books to date. Welcome back, my friend Albert Rosales, to Into the Fringe.
Thanks for having me, Cardinal Sin. I'm glad to be back with you guys
tonight. It is good to have you, as always. And I wanted to mention, that there's no intro tonight because I discovered that the reason that I'm not monetized is that there's this organization called Hawk, HAAWK, for a third party. And every time I use my intro, which uses licensed music from Envato Elements, they do a copyright notice on me. And then I appeal and put in my license, and then they remove the copyright notice. But the YouTube algorithm doesn't know that. So I'm going to be redoing all of my intros, and I apologize that intro is not ready yet, but soon we'll have a brand new one, and Hawk for a third party can go fuck themselves. Also, I'd like to mention, I first ran across Albert's online database of humanoid encounters. And you know how people get addicted to streaming shows? I was stuck reading these entries for 3 days straight. I could not tear myself away, and I didn't even scratch the surface. For now, Albert's books are available on Amazon. And remember, folks, stay until the end of the show when we'll be giving away an autographed copy of Albert's book from tonight, Humanoid Encounters. The Others Among Us, 1990 to 1994. And I'd also like to issue a trigger warning. Albert always brings the spooky, which is one of the reasons he's a fan favorite here on Into the Fringe. But many of these cases, while not necessarily involving violence, can be scary and even terrifying. This is not creepypasta. These are actual documented cases. So you have been warned. Albert, while we're waiting for people to roll in, can you tell us about the different case types, what they mean, where they come from, and the ones that you created?
Well, the one I deal with is the close encounters of what they call close encounter of the third kind, which is encounters with humanoids or entities or UFOnauts, spaceman, whatever you call it. And back in the day, Alan Hynek, he had a category to separate the cases. The close encounters of the third kind. He had type A, which was basically when you see a flying saucer or UFO flying nearby over your house and there's lighted window or an opening, and you see someone there at the window or an entity looking at you, that's type 1.
Mm-hmm.
Type A, I'm sorry. Type B, and when you actually see a UFO landing, or maybe you don't see a landing, but you come up on a UFO on the ground, and you see entities coming in and out of that UFO. Type C, when you see a UFO on the ground or hovering near the ground nearby, and there are entities around it or nearby, but they're not actually seen going in and out of the UFO. Now, type D, kind of ambiguous, but it's when there's a UFO flap. Flap is when there's a lot of sightings concentrated in a certain area.
In one area.
And there's an entity seen in the area, which might not be connected to the UFOs. Type E, which is very common, is when you see you encounter an entity or entities alone, let's say in the woods or hiking or in your bedroom, what we call bedroom visitors. The scariest type, because most of the time you're paralyzed, you can't move.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to me once. And then after that, we got type F, which is usually a psychic connection between a UFO and the percipient or the witness. Usually when there's mental communication, telepathy, and necessarily there's no entity seen, but from the UFO to the percipient. And then there's very common now, type G, which is actual abduction, or sometimes you're voluntarily going to the UFO, which is not really an abduction, but you're invited in, but it falls in within the same type G. Type H is supposed to be a recovery of a crash UFO or an occupant or an entity, either like Roswell or an entity that was shot in 1978 at Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Or like the Varginha case.
That's right, from Brazil, which was documented the recovery of entities. And there's many of those, actually, more than you think. Now, I added a couple. I added type X, which is a really high strangeness quality to the case. Could be anything, but it's really, for some reason, it's just a case that's really out there. Many of those. I added type I, was an injury or a death to a witness. So any type of injury, or there's documented cases in which, unfortunately, witnesses die soon after the end of the encounter.
An encounter, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also one that I added when there's a strange animal or creature in the area, which is I added that as a U.A, unknown animal or creature. And that's a new one that I added in there because there are a lot of cases in which I'm not including Bigfoot in there. Bigfoot, I think, is an intelligent.
But these creature. Are sort of cryptid animals.
Yeah, like pterodactyl or some kind, stuff like that.
Mothman, that kind of thing.
Well, Mothman is more humanoid, but yeah, there's cases.
I guess a chupacabra maybe might be closer.
Yeah, chupacabra. Even though it might exhibit intelligent behavior, but there's a lot of cases. Let's say there's a case in Venezuela where they're driving through the jungle area and something stepped out in front of the Jeep that looked like one of those dinosaurs with the ridges in the back. I forgot, pteranodon, and maybe out of place or out of time creature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's going.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's say hello to the folks that we have in the audience who are eagerly awaiting our cases today. We have Rui here. Greetings. Good to see Rui. Herc 130 is here, as is James Caserta. Ree is here. Phantom Boomer is here. Darius Munchausen says, "Hail, Cardinal Sin, hail." And Cosmic Squirrel says, "Greetings from the cosmos."
Greetings.
And Lawrence Martin just popped in. Good to see you, Lawrence Martin. And I'm sure we will have some other people roll in as we go. But let's go ahead and jump into the cases. I'll take this first one if that's okay with you, Albert.
That's fine. I hope I got some creepy cases. I don't know.
Oh, there's plenty of creepy cases in here.
You think so? Okay, very good.
Right. Yeah, there are a few that's why I issued the trigger warning.
All right.
There's some that are just really creepy. You always bring the creepy.
I try to find. There's so many of them. Sometimes it's hard to. It's amazing. I don't know when I'm gone. What am I going to do with that database? Somebody's going to have to. I'm going to distribute it to certain. Maybe you'll get one copy of it, and
that's a good idea.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
That I have connections worldwide. Yeah.
Mirror sites all over the world.
There you go.
So this first one is from 1990, and the time is 3:30 a.m. A local female resident living near Militia Police Station number 27 reported a strange encounter with two humanoids.
That's in Moscow. The location is Moscow. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I'm
Moscow,
sorry.
Russia.
Yeah. Moscow, Russia. Yeah. And reported a strange encounter with two humanoids that appeared on her balcony. She suddenly woke up, and after seeing two silent flashes of light, she saw a glow appear behind the windows. When she came close to the window, she saw a disc-shaped craft, approximately 10 to 12 meters in diameter. The disc disappeared behind the house, and soon a large figure appeared from that direction. The humanoid figure was floating in the air in a vertical position, flying toward her house, then descended to the ground and began walking among some trees. Sometime after that, this entity zoomed up and approached her balcony. The entity was very tall, about 2.5 meters in height. The humanoid was dressed in a dark grayish spacesuit and was standing with its head bent down, looking to the ground from the balcony. A second figure, smaller in size, about 1.5 meters in height, then appeared in sight. It stopped within sight of the witness and pulled her helmet backward, and the witness saw the face of a girl with very white skin, with large eyes, emanating warmth, goodwill, and intelligence. Unexpectedly, the witness fell back to her sofa. Her eyelids became heavy, and she quickly fell asleep. She awoke in that same position at 7:00 a.m.
Yeah, so not necessarily frightening, but kind of creepy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's from Vladimir Asaja. He's an eminent UFO researcher there from Russia.
A PhD, yeah.
Yeah, PhD. All righty then. Well, I'll take the next one. This is from Prague, Czechoslovakia back then. Now it's the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
7-year-old Kay suddenly woke up in the middle of the night to see two very handsome young men standing in the hallway. One was blonde in a bright suit. The other was with black hair in a black outfit. They both looked at her, smiling, and then disappeared in plain sight. But a quarter of an hour later, they returned, smiled again, and then left, this time for good. Another resident in the house, 17-year-old M, also reported a strange visit. 5 young, handsome men will always wake her up around 5 o'clock in the morning and talk to her about half an hour each time. She had no doubt about the time because she kept looking at the alarm clock. Unlike previous visitors, these wore white shirts and blue pants. According to M, the fabric of their clothing appeared to be soft and loose-fitting. It doesn't really specify what they talked about, but this is what we call a typical bedroom visitation, type E. And this is from researchers Jitka Lenkova and Ladislav Lenk. Their book, Extraterrestrials Over Bohemia.
This sounds like some of the bedroom visitations of the Hat Man that I've heard about.
Yeah, the Hat Man is usually dark. You can't see the face, but yeah, could be
Okay,
related.
you're going to have to help me so I don't murder the name of this place. A location,
Want me to say that? I'll say the location for you.
Caguas?
Caguas.
Caguas.
Aguas Buenas, Puerto Rico.
Well, easy for you to say. Okay, so this is 1990 and it's late at night. 14-year-old Leslie Annette Gomez remembers that at the time her home had a very large antenna on the roof for better television reception since cable television wasn't yet available in the region. That night, she prepared herself a snack and got ready to watch the program Ojeda Sin Límites with new reporter Luis Francisco Ojeda. As she sat down to watch the show, her television suddenly lost all signal. Upset, she asked her father to climb onto the roof to adjust the antenna, but a 2-story house her father refused and told her if she wanted to watch the television, she would have to do it. She climbed up to the roof and grabbed the antenna with one hand, but it seemed stuck. It wouldn't budge, and it felt heavy. Suddenly, she heard above her what sounded like the sounds of wings flapping. Before looking to see what it was, she thought it might have been a heron that frequented the area, even though whatever was on the antenna seemed heavier. She shook the antenna again and again, but it did not budge. She looked up and saw a creature about 6 feet tall that resembled some sort of hybrid between a man and a bat. The creature was staring at her and flapping its wings at the same time. It was completely silent. Besides flapping its wings, it did not make any threatening moves, but it didn't leave. Its eyes seemed to be oriented toward the front of the face, not to the sides like a bird, and its face, which was bat-like in appearance, was definitely humanoid. Its eyes shone a color between yellow and red. Terrified, Leslie let go of the antenna and doesn't exactly remember how she got down from the roof, but it was fast. She told her father what she had seen when she saw her pale and out of breath in the living room. Strangely, her father reprimanded her and said that he had told her not to go up this late, that her uncle had encountered a similar bird recently. And this comes from Jorge Martin Miranda, Puerto Rico.
See, that's why I have cable. I don't want to go up to the roof, check my antenna.
No, certainly not after I tried to install a air conditioning unit in my window and kind of slipped myself off of the roof and broke every bone in my lower left leg. And that was several years ago, but it was a dumb thing to do.
All right, the next one is from a place called Makhachkala, which is the capital of the Dagestan Republic in the North Caucasus region of Russia. Spring 1990, around midnight. The witness, M, short for M, characterized as a sober-minded and respected individual, after returning home, saw a strange bright green coin-like circle hovering in the air above the refrigerator, I guess inside the house. At first, he thought it was a portable flashlight accidentally left switched on by his wife. But when he asked her, she denied that. M looked again at the green coin-sized light and noticed that it seemed to be increasing in size and becoming more intense. Suddenly, the object began to move in the air. It made circular movements and it began flying around the witness in a complicated trajectory. The witness felt heat coming from the light and also heard a whistling sound. The green light then expanded more and transformed into a human-like head. The witness thought that he was going crazy and turned his face to the wall and began praying to Allah, being a Muslim. However, when he looked back over his shoulder, the image was still there despite his prayers. The image had now transformed itself into a humanoid shape with arms, legs, and a body that was totally covered in dense fur, like an ape. Interesting. The humanoid appeared to be a cyclops, one eye, with only one eye in the middle of the forehead, which emanated a red beam of light, like that of a flashlight. The neck was absent, and his head was set squarely on a pair of powerful shoulders. The entity height was more than 2 meters, and he was very muscular. The intruder began floating in midair, just above the floor, moving forward toward where M's children were sleeping. M hurried and rushed ahead of the entity towards his children, covering them with his body. At this point, he began to pray again, asking Allah to save him and his children from the hairy monster. The creature floated towards the bed and covered M and his children briefly, picked them up, and then dropped them back down immediately on the bed without harming them. The creature then stepped back as M still covered his children, his body now facing the strange entity. The entity stood motionless at some distance from the bed. The humanoid did not make any threatening moves. Trembling in horror, M hid his head under the bedsheet and continued praying in earnest. Soon the doors creaked and there was a loud slamming sound. This awoke M's wife, which confirmed her husband's story, emphasizing that he had never experienced any hallucinations. After the encounter, he always worried about the creature returning and abducting him and his children. In due time, the family moved into another apartment. Now, that was weird. That's a kind of a out there bedroom visitation.
Yeah.
A hairy humanoid cyclopean.
Yeah.
Like a
Cyclops.
in nature, cyclops. This is from researcher Alexei K. Prima. He's written several books on UFOs and humanoids in Russia, from Russia.
And I guess UFO Witness to the Unknown is
one of his books,
1997.
Yeah, that's one of his books.
Okay. So this location is Sparrenburg, Germany. The date is summer 1990. The time is unknown. A Russian soldier, native of the Krasnodar region, was on sentry duty at the staff of the main East German Soviet military base located 40 kilometers south of Berlin, which had a large airfield, when he was reported missing. His disappearance was discovered during a change of shifts. He could not have been able to leave the building unnoticed since his post was on the second floor, and to get out, he would have had to have passed 2 sentry posts and a bunker. He was found quite by accident 2 weeks later, roaming through an area of disused bunkers, tanks, and other equipment located about 15 kilometers from the base. The area also contained dangerous unexploded ordnance and was cordoned off by 4 rows of barbed wire and was well guarded. He was in a very confused and agitated state. He could only remember that while on guard duty, he was confronted by several huge men, all dressed in black. The men's heads resembled that of an inverted bucket. The soldier remembered nothing else. He could not explain how he had appeared in the restricted area and where he had been for the past 2 weeks. The soldier was then sent to a rehabilitation center in Belitz. There he was hospitalized for a long time. The soldier never returned to his unit again. His story became the subject of wide circulating rumors among the military garrison at Sparrenburg. And this source is the Anio Research Group in Crossroads of Centaurs, Rostov number 2, and is a G-type encounter.
Yeah, because we got to assume he was abducted somehow, and he lost 2 weeks of his, he lost 2 weeks of his life. You don't know what happened to him. I guess they didn't do any hypnotic regression back then at that location, but I'm sure that was a typical abduction. Okay, here we go. The next one is what we call the Nordic type entities. This is at the city of Astrakhan in Russia. The reason we got so many Russian cases because in 1990 and 1991 it was
Oh, it
amazing
opened
what
up
happened
because
over
of the
there. Yeah.
fall of the Berlin Wall.
Oh yeah, and then all the cases happening at the time. A
Mm-hmm.
local metal worker was resting on a street bench after having worked all day. He suddenly looked up and saw an object hovering over him, resembling a large star. On the edges of the star, he saw bright flashes of light. This is in August 1990 evening. I'm sorry. Then the star descended, and he was able to see the borders on the metallic surface of a strange craft consisting of several segmented metal structures joined by some type of rivet-like objects. Moments later, a grayish cloud enveloped him. The fog seemed to condense and assume a white tint. The fog then became gray again and vanished. The astounded man then found himself in a strange colored room. Next, he was confronted by several humanoids in the room. The humanoids were human-like, very attractive looking, with beautiful features, possibly of the Nordic type entity. The aliens communicated with the witness and invited him to drink some multicolored liquids, which were quite tasty but very difficult to compare with any drink on Earth. The alien crew then gave the witness a tour of the ship into the different compartments of the circular alien craft. The man walked along the corridors with strangely pressed bas reliefs or pictures on the walls. Then they show him what appeared to be a power plant. But before doing that, they put a kind of spacesuit on him. I guess some kind of protective, suit. Then they entered the main engine compartment. Apparently, a power source emitted dangerous emissions to humans, he was told. The stunned man saw lots of sophisticated equipment, and then he was returned back to Earth. Soon after the encounter, the witness began research into what he called magnetic liquid, which was what was used to power the UFO's engine.
That reminds me of the mercury that was supposedly used in the Die Glocke, the Nazi bell that Joseph Farrell wrote about.
Die Glocke, yeah. And remember, in the Mexican pyramids, they say they found flowing mercury at the bottom also. Some of those, yeah. Anyway, the aliens informed the witness, among other facts, that they wanted to prevent the crash on the bridge of a Russian vessel on the River Volga back in the spring of 1990, and sent their saucer in order to prevent the collision. But the alien spacecraft also experienced technical problems and lost power. So another alien craft had to approach the first one and transmit power to the first one. But it was too late to prevent the tragic accident on the Volga. Amazingly, another resident in Astrakhan, a Mrs. Fadiva, confirmed the incident. She reported seeing two UFOs in the air before the incident with a ship, and noticed the moment when something like thunderbolts jumped between both UFOs. Well, they tried to do something and it didn't work out, but can't blame them for trying. This is from Major E. Sutin, director of the Astrakhan UFO Center. And back in the 90s, early 90s, and up to, there were a lot of UFO groups in Russia because, like you say, the fall of the wall and the opening, a lot of stuff going on.
Does this seem to you, Albert, like a possible time travel case?
Who knows? Maybe maybe these were maybe some of these people that are being encountered might be time travelers, either lost or
but if they said they were there to prevent the other one from crashing,
the ship
is
from
it
crashing,
possible
maybe they
came
knew
back
that.
to change that event?
Maybe they tried. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you're with the French accent, so you take the next one.
Okay. And hail to Don McDouglas. And I will go ahead and take the next one here. This one is location Sornay, Sion et la France. The date February 1991. The time 1500 hours. The witness was attracted to bright lights in a meadow opposite to his house, about 100 or 150 meters away. He calls to his daughter and wife, who bring over a pair of binoculars. With the help of the binoculars, they see 5 small beings dressed in a combination type metallic gray suits with boots of the same color. Their heads were covered in a sort of helmet with a rectangular clear window in the middle. They seem to be engaged in the collection of grass and dirt. On the center of their chests, they have a bright white light. According to the witnesses, they somewhat resembled the famed Michelin Man of the tire commercial. We've talked about those before.
Yeah.
Some are seen to bend down to pick up plants. A few meters behind them is a dome-shaped bright orange object. During the observation, a car is seen to drive by the area and stop, apparently to observe. Later, an anonymous witness comes forward to report that while driving through the area, his car suddenly stopped dead, and he was then surrounded by several small men. He was able to see a dull dome-shaped object in the field. And the source is Lumières dans la nuit, and this is a type C encounter.
The Lumières dans la nuit, the lights in the sky,
Mm-hmm.
lights in the night, actually, is a famous French UFO newsletter magazine. Has been since in the late 50s, has been operating. All right, we go back to Russia again.
Mm-hmm.
This is in Samara, Russia, March 14, 1991, time 5 a.m. Local pensioner and former teacher, L.G. Agivalova, had walked into the hallway of her apartment and screamed in surprise upon seeing a strange entity standing in front of her in a pose that appeared aggressive to her. The entity had long, widespread arms and thick, set legs. Excuse me. The humanoid's height was a little higher than the witness, or about 165 centimeters, maybe 1.65 meters. The entity was dressed in a black shiny suit resembling lacquered skin. His head was slightly flattened. The entity's eyes amazed her. They resembled 2 pieces of burning coal emanating red light. The entity looked at the witness in a stern, if not ominous or hostile stare. The entity's nose was small, but she could not discern any other facial features, maybe because the entity's face was covered by a mask or helmet. The witness became numb with fear, and for several seconds stared at the entity's face. Soon, the visitor behaved even more strangely. It suddenly transformed itself into a small globe that hovered over the floor. It then suddenly vanished. The woman suffered from repeated nightmares after the incident and now sleeps with the lights on in the hallway. Now, this is a shapeshifter type entity, I guess, if they can do that. This is from another researcher that's written several books, Gennady Belimov. This is from his book, Ghosts from the Skies. That's the English translation of the book. 1992.
Okay. Well, this is also a Russian incident. This is from Moscow, dated March 23, 1991, 2 o'clock in the morning. Tatiana Hikolovena Tarasov noticed a strange glow emanating from the window of her apartment. Looking out the window, she saw a small green sphere like a globe hovering outside. On the sphere, she saw what appeared to be the Maltese cross imprinted on it. As she watched, the sphere began to revolve at high speed, and suddenly a small figure appeared in the room with Tatiana. She described it as a humanoid of about 120 to 130 centimeters in height, very slender, and dressed in a tight-fitting one-piece bright suit. The head was somewhat small and sharpened at the top. Tatiana ran to the bedroom where her husband slept, but the entity also appeared there. As the dog attempted to approach the figure, it pointed a finger at it, and the dog stopped in its tracks. Tatiana ran to the kitchen and was confronted by two additional and similar humanoids and heard a commanding voice inviting her to go with them. At this point, Tatiana apparently lost consciousness and does not remember what occurred next. She was examined by doctors the next day and found to be in good health. And the source of this is from UFO Zone, Russia, a Type E encounter.
Yeah, it could have been also Type E. Yeah, kind of weird. Bedroom visitations again. UFO Zone used to be a website in Russia. Is now defunct, but they had a lot of cases. All right, we go back. Excuse me. The next one, my throat is bothering me today. We're going to the USA, Lancaster, California, May 14, 1991, 2300 hours. And Pam, that's the witness involved in other sightings, reports that three gray type entities appeared by her bedside and started to lift her off the bed. She lives in a large custom-built pentagonal desert home that has one large room without partitions. The kitchen, bedroom, and living room are open to one another. She started to struggle with the grays, the 4 foot tall. They were the 4.5 foot category when she spotted a human in the living room area. A man dressed all in black was holding a device that resembled a small TV and dangling on a cord. Pan heard the man say, "You have no electricity." At this point, she somehow freed herself from the entities and went to grab a light cord that will switch on the light for her 12-volt system. The light would not come on. She then yelled for her husband to awaken. Events then took a bizarre turn. Hearing her 100-pound Labrador barking in the yard, she and her husband went to the north-facing kitchen window. Their attention was drawn to a man who lay prone on a projecting part of the roof near the ladder. The man was dressed in full dress Air Force blues. The three grays were now on the ground below the man, as well as a canine sentry dog that was poised to attack Pam's dog, Casey. In the sky over the yard, there were several red lights. The men yelled to the grays, "Get her out of the house," while Pam yelled, "Don't kill my dog." In the wake of this panic, Pam next remembers standing alone outside and behind their generator shack. The man, the dog, the grays, and her husband were no longer in sight. Red lights were revolving above her, and a thick fog was emanating from ports set around the large craft, hovering above. Her next memory was that of awakening, seated on her bed at 3:50 a.m. in the morning. It seems Pam believes she may have been taken to a base inside the Tehachapi Mountains in California. There's rumors there of an underground base there, and that she was cautioned not to reveal what she knows. She felt very threatened by the incident. This is from researcher Bill Hamilton and MUFON UFO Journal 286. So could be a combination of aliens and military personnel abduction here. What they call my labs.
Yeah, my labs indeed. And we have a question here for you, Albert. Nemesis of Eden asks, any thoughts that the bedroom accounts could just be sleep paralysis hallucinations? I used to see shadow people moving around my room as a kid.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but they're too complicated to be that. They last a long time too. They're more corporeal. They're not just fleeting shadows. there that, these people are fully awake and they encounter these. There might be cases, where that be the case. I had that myself. I like those waking dreams when you see somebody standing next to the room. That's happened to me. But
Yeah,
these
I've
are
had sleep paralysis before, but it seems like it wears off pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly,
after
yeah.
You wake up and you're, paralyzed.
Now these are very pretty much in-depth accounts, and they last for a while, and they more than one entity usually seen, and there's a lot going on for it to be a sleep paralysis.
So we're going to go ahead and share this image here. And this dates from the summer of 1991, the time between 22 and 2300 hours. Several children, this is location Pelhřimov near Prague in the Czech Republic. Several children attending a summer camp near Prague reported that one evening they had gathered around a large campfire singing songs, playing guitar, and basically enjoying the last weekend before they were to head home the following day. Later that evening, the darkness around the camp suddenly changed, and the place was illuminated. Everybody was wondering what was going on, and the children as well as the camp leaders raised their heads to watch above and see where the lights came from. All the camp participants could then observe a large flying saucer silently crossing the night sky. In a similar way as spotlights, the saucer emitted 3 beams of light that were shining over the whole camp. According to witnesses around the saucer itself, there was a huge glow, making it look as blue as clear day. While it hovered without moving above the camp, it seems as if the beams searched the ground methodically. Shortly after chaos ensued among the children and adults, the camp leaders immediately brought the children into their respective tents, and a curfew was immediately implemented, allowing no one to leave or look outside their tents. But some of the most curious children kept peeping out of the tents toward the night sky. The flying saucer had set in motion and moved closer to the nearby forest. There it stopped and hovered silently above some tall spruces. From the bottom of the saucer, a large glowing sphere descended slowly toward the ground behind the trees. Shortly after, a loud noise and a roaring sound was heard, and after some time had passed, the saucer moved to hover above the forest again. Paradoxically, while a strict curfew had been implemented, the ban was only adhered to by the adults. A small group of girls, among them a young girl named Petra, who later related the story to her mother, decided to pretend to go to the restrooms so they could escape from the tent to undertake an adventurer's expedition. Their curiosity was great, and besides, the restroom facility was located right next to the forest. While heading back to the camp from their expedition, 2 of the girls suddenly froze. On the forest path leading to the camp stood 3 tall white figures, approximately 2 meters in height. To the girls, these figures resembled tall people dressed in spacesuits. They were unable to see their faces since they wore something akin to modern-day space helmets. In a rather surprising manner, the group of girls and the 3 white-suited figures gazed at each other. What followed appeared to have been some kind of mutual examination, and shortly after, the white figures began to retreat. In a slow motion, they turned around and headed back into the forest. The girls then ran all the way to their tents and informed the camp leaders about their experience. Apparently, the girls had not been the only ones who observed the tall white figures. Other children had observed them as well. Some of the children had also observed a sphere ascending over the top of the trees before returning to the hovering saucer. Others saw the sphere enter the saucer through the bottom. The object then slowly moved away silently, and eventually the campers fell asleep. The next morning, when everybody woke up, no one could believe what they had seen. The ashes from the big campfire were now scattered in the vicinity of the campfire. Stranger still, everything that was composed of wood, such as benches, had been chopped and demolished into small pieces. Even the axe that had been left outside had been chopped to pieces, only its metal part remained intact. Fortunately, the tents and cabins where the campers slept in had remained undamaged. After the morning cleaning routine, a group of the oldest children set off toward the place where the sphere or ball of light had appeared to the previous night. The site was only a 5-minute walk away. There, they found what appeared to have been a landing area in a small clearing surrounded by trees. The group observed a circular depressed area in the center of the area. They estimated it to have been 6 meters in diameter and 1 meter in depth. The edge of the pit was cut very precisely. The area of forest ground had completely disappeared. And the source is Exopolitics Czech Republic. And this is in JAR magazine. And by the way, I'd like to recommend the website www.jarmagazine.com. It's very interesting, and it's filled with fascinating cases that I think viewers will really enjoy. I'm going to put that link into the chat because there's lots of really interesting stuff there.
I believe that's the Journal of Abduction Research magazine. Yeah.
Yes. And if you're at all interested in abductions, any kind of humanoid encounters, I think that this is a website that you'll enjoy. Canadian Spider-Man has it up there.
Okay, we were talking about time travel. Now, let me know what you think of this next case here.
Okay.
This is it occurred near Angle Inlet in Minnesota, August 1991, late one night. The witness was on his way to a cabin at the Northwest Angle Resort when his old GMC pickup truck broke down. Afraid and alone in an isolated area, he armed himself with his old .22 caliber pistol, which he probably hadn't fired in 5 years. As soon as he switched off to his headlights, he noticed a faint yellow glow coming from deep in the woods on the east side of the road. He thought it was a cabin and got out of his truck and walked towards the light. When he reached the edge of the forest, he could see that the light was a considerably way into the woods, but difficult to tell how far. Reluctantly, he stepped into the woods, keeping his eyes on the yellow glow. The woods were wet with dew. The pungent smell of rotting leaves and old wood hung in the air, as did patches of mist drifting up from the forest floor. All the while, he was filled with fearful uncertainty. He had no idea what the light was. His mind raced with wild ideas. But as he got closer, the witness began to sense that what he was approaching was stranger than anything he imagined. About 20 yards away, he made out the shape of 3 men standing around some kind of large light. In the witness's words, it definitely wasn't a campfire. I'm sure of that. It didn't flicker like a campfire. It was a steady glow. It was like a large globe on the ground, and those men were just standing around it, stiff-like. It just didn't seem right. You usually sit around a campfire, but these guys were stiff and just strange somehow. Their body language was off kilter, not natural. Despite his fear, the witness called out to them. Hearing the shout, the 3 shadowy figures jerked, turned, and stood rigidly. Then, according to the witness, something bizarre happened. quote, the light they were standing around transformed instantly into a campfire. I mean, I didn't see it directly, but one minute it was steady, glowing light, and the next it was a flickering, crackling, smoking campfire. Excuse me. Not sure what to think, and without options, the witness approached the man, squeezing his pistol hard in his sweaty palm, hiding behind his back. When he got closer, he could now describe the men. They were ordinary-looking men, I suppose, but the way they were dressed was very odd. One of the men was wearing a cape. He also sported a thick purple shirt with no buttons and matching purple pants. Excuse me. He was wearing tall leather boots. His face and hair seemed normal. His cape was clasped at the shoulder with a magnificent gold ornament which glinted in the firelight. The second man was wearing pants that were like knickers and were bunched up like riding pants. At first, the three men stared the witness as if he were some kind of circus freak, but then they seemed to quickly recover and try to act normal. The witness, named Duke, stepped out to the fire and said hello and started to explain that his pickup had broken down on the road. The man with the bald head stepped up to him, smiled broadly, and said in stiff English, "You have lathed your feet and joined us here to be happy, all three." That's what he said, kind of. The witness thought that the statement was strange and immediately thought that the strangers were foreigners, like Russians trying to enter the United States illegally. The man in the cape then moved forward and pushed the bald guy aside. He asked, "The Eon, is it off, sir?" Is what he asked. He asked the witness, "The Eon, is it off, sir?" Flabbergasted, the witness told the stranger that he wasn't sure what he meant by Eon. The three strangers all gave each other inside looks as if they were all part of some kind of conspiracy. Then the Cape man said, "You more to say. We hear more to say." At this point, the witness was more certain he was talking to some kind of foreign smuggler, although he could not fathom their accents. They didn't sound Russian or like any foreign accent that he is familiar with. They sounded like people speaking in a strange form of true English. The stranger said, "I talked to them some more, but it was extremely awkward." The witness said, "I'm sorry. I talked to them some more, but it was extremely awkward. I mean, they were nice and everything, but nothing they said made any sense. They were speaking English, but it was all mixed up, like they were putting together words from a dictionary without really knowing what each word meant in proper context." The witness said goodbye to the three strangers, and the men in the cape said, "For positive, yes." The witness finally made it to the resort camp where he told his friends about his encounter, but all they did was make fun of him. A week later, he looked up the meaning of the strange word "eon" and discovered that it was another form of the word eon, E-E-O-N, which means an indefinitely long period of time, an age. And this is from Ken Korsak in his old website. And I commented, were these lost time travelers? Who were these people?
Yeah, that's a weird one. They definitely didn't seem to have a command of the language. Not a total one, anyway.
No, and they were like dressed strange. Yeah, and they were definitely speaking weird, and the way that the ball of light they were standing around it transformed into a campfire. Who knows? They were trying to hide something. Okay.
Yeah. Those wacky aliens. Okay, so this one comes from Playa Media Luna, Vieques Island, Puerto Rico. The date 1992, and this took place during the afternoon. Mr. Anibal Perez and his young nephew had come to the beach with their grandmother and were enjoying themselves when suddenly and apparently out of the depths of the waters, a young man about 12 years of age, about 4 feet 3 inches tall, thin and with white skin, emerged and approached the two witnesses. In one of his hands he carried what appeared to be sand, which he would take up into his mouth occasionally. The stranger appeared curious and friendly and followed the two witnesses, apparently looking for companionship. They asked him who he was, but the stranger only emitted a sound like that of a dolphin. That would be kind of creepy. Suddenly, the boy dived into the waters and seemed to swim down to the depths. Moments later, he reappeared, bringing some sand in his hand, which he offered to the two now befuddled witnesses. Apparently, he wanted the men to eat the sand, but they demurred. They were even more surprised to see the boy ingest the sand-like material. The stranger was described as completely human-like, somewhat thin, with long black hair, wearing light-colored yellow shorts. As the two witnesses swam about, the stranger seemed to imitate their every move. He dived into the deep again, this time returning with some algae, which he also offered to the witnesses. Emitting strange whistling sounds, he seemed to want to communicate with the witnesses. After some questioning by the witnesses, the stranger began to imitate their speech, repeating everything that was said to him. After a while, he seemed to be able to speak some coherent words and said that he was from, quote, the bottom of the sea, close quote. A few minutes later, he stared at the two witnesses, then bid them farewell, saying, "Goodbye, humans." He then dove into the waters, never to be seen again. Annabelle additionally described the strange boy as having dark, neck-length, somewhat curly hair. He had dark brown eyes, which were normal in appearance. His nose seemed normal, and so did his mouth with thin lips. When they saw him eating the algae, Annabelle saw that the stranger had a row of perfect white teeth. He would sometimes mimic the witnesses when they laughed. And I'll let you tell us what the source is, Albert.
This is Jorge Martin from Puerto Rico, and his book Polígono del Tercer Tipo, Hanger of the Third Type. That's a Spanish book, Spanish language book that he wrote years ago. But he always talked about underwater installations or bases around Puerto Rico, and he thinks this could be related, this incident, to that.
It makes sense to me.
Okay, next one, we go to Mexico, a place called Orizaba. That's another volcanic region there, and less known than Popo. 1992, late night, Martha Espinosa Luna, involved in numerous previous encounters, we have here a repeater, had gone to bed when suddenly she felt herself being transported through midair. Her husband attempted to wake up, but suddenly felt very tired and immediately fell asleep. She looked around her and saw several short gray color entities. She was stunned, and she was able to see through her body like an X-ray machine. She could see her complete skeletal structure. She screamed as she suddenly felt terrific pain, but one of the short gray humanoids approached her and touched her forehead, immediately eliminating the pain. She was told that it was for her own good. Later, the witness wakes up and finds her husband wakes up and finds her unconscious. As he tried to arouse her, he found a bleeding scar on her chest. In other encounters, when her husband has been present right before the event, he becomes drowsy and lethargic and eventually goes to sleep, to a deep sleep. Martha's scars are located above her breasts and sometimes bleed in the same manner as stigmatism. Quote. One time, her husband attempted to film the bleeding scars, but only an extremely bright glare was captured by the camera, and nothing concrete could be discerned.
Albert, I
Yeah,
wonder if they meant stigmata, the scars located above her breast sometimes bled in the same manner as stigmata.
stigmata. What I said, stigmatism. Okay,
Stigmatism, yeah.
which is okay. Yeah, stigmata. Yeah, that's right. Martha feels that her character has completely changed since the beginning of her encounters, and now is more patient when speaking to others. Dermatologist Dr. Lydia Elena Hernandez Holguin has studied and analyzed Martha's scars and has come to the conclusion that these were done with extremely sharp instrument from inside her body, quote, and cauterized perfectly. This from Mexican researcher Rosana Tejera Lopez from her old website, El Durmiente de Orizaba, which is now no longer working. So this is a kind of weird case. Grades, we have stigmata, and we have all kinds of stuff going on there.
From inside the body, it kind of reminds me of The Exorcist. All right. The next one is from El Dorado County, California, March 1992, during the nighttime. Something very strange was occurring in the area of the middle branch of the Consomme River in El Dorado County, California. The source has documented a continuous series of events that have been going on since 1989, mostly during the period from December through March or April, usually after sunset. Incidents increased in 1992, which was a banner year for UFO flaps, with many events occurring during daylight hours. One witness, who will be referred to as BG, reported sighting a large disc-shaped craft departing from a cloud-like form in an otherwise cloudless sky. On occasion, strange beings have been seen moving across the landscape. They left no tracks. According to BG, quote, I got close to 3 of them one night, and it's like they had little glowing things on their legs. I could see their legs, but I couldn't see them moving, close quote. One night, BG saw 2 transparent bubble-like objects. One bubble had 1 occupant, and the other had 2 occupants. The objects were smaller than a Volkswagen car and were completely illuminated. Inside one, 2 beings sat side by side. One had his hands hanging down, and the other had his hands on his legs. Quote, I could see their fingers, close quote, BG said. Quote, they had 3 or 4 fingers, close quote. BG has also seen large and small boomerang-shaped white lines like an outline going up through the canyon. He said that what he sees is electricity running along the white outline. One family set up camp in the canyon and departed the next morning. They told BG that they were leaving after a big disc-shaped craft descended near their campsite during the night and lowered a hose into the river. These damn aliens keep stealing our water, Albert. What is going on?
Yeah, it's happened a lot of times. Many times. That's from Virgil Staff, MUFON Journal, 296. The next one is from Arkansas. To be more specific, Fort Chaffee Army Base in Arkansas. It happened between April 15 and May 5th, 1992, 12:30 a.m. An American officer who wished to remain anonymous affirmed that aliens took part in a military exercise that took place in Arkansas. There are more things that I cannot quote. There are more things that I cannot talk about, yet I think I can say something, end quote. Airborne troops conducted their exercise from April 15th to May 5th, 1992. The event took place on the territory of the Fort Chaffee Army Base. The exercise was performed under the codename Operation Curtain. Special units of airborne troops from Venezuela, Ecuador, the USA, and Puerto Rico took part in the exercise. The troops were sent to swamps in a remote part of the base. It was ordered not to allow the dummy bridge that was built for the exercise to be exploded. No unit managed to prevent the explosion of the bridge. Neither the Venezuelans or Americans, nor the soldiers from Ecuador managed to detect the enemy. No one could understand how the saboteur made his way without even bumping into any of the best units. Nevertheless, it happened, according to the officer. Commandos from Puerto Rico encircled the swamp and started waiting for the enemy. A strange noise could be heard in the distance at about 12:30 at night. Soldiers thought that the enemy had landed on the other side of the swamp. Everybody was ready to meet them. The only aspect that they did not know was the time that would take for the enemy to cross the swamp. Before the exercise began, the commandos were given an order not to use night vision devices. However, there was an American sergeant among the Puerto Ricans who had such a device. The soldiers soon heard strange sounds coming from the other side of the swamp. The sounds were getting more and more distinct. Everybody was staring in that direction, but no one saw anything at all. Suddenly, everyone smelled the strong odor of the swamp. One of the Puerto Rican officers ran out of patience and asked the American sergeant to give him the night vision device. The officer looked around the territory, and then he saw 3 small creatures. They were visible with the naked eye. The officer gave the night vision device to another officer, and so on. Everybody saw the weird enemy, quote. The soldiers eventually contacted their command. The command kept silence for a while, and then he was ordered to carefully watch the creatures without bringing harm to them. They were like little people, about a meter high. They looked absolutely white in the night vision devices. There was another such creature sitting on a stump. F is watching the crawling ones. At first, the witnesses thought they were wearing some kind of helmet, but then realized that they were not helmets, but long, egg-shaped heads. He could even see their big black eyes with no eyeballs. It also seemed to the witness that they had 2 little holes instead of a nose. He did not see a mouth. They had 4-digit hands. The officers also said that a helicopter soon arrived and took the little people away. The command strictly ordered everyone to maintain silence about the event. The American officer was struck with what he saw. He did not say anything about it for 2 years. This is investigated by Jorge Martin, again, from Puerto Rico. Apparently, he got in contact with some of the Puerto Rican soldiers that were at the scene of the encounter.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Sea greens and protein from the sea. Okay, this next one comes from Liverpool, England, and is dated August 1992, 3 a.m. The 2 witnesses had gone to bed after drinking tea. Janet woke up with a feeling of absolute terror. She felt as if she had been somewhere and then landed back in her bed. Harry had also awakened and caught a glimpse of something more substantial than a shadow on the bed. It seemed to recede, as if it had gone through a doorway. Later, when the pair recovered, Janet remembered what had happened. She recalled lying down with bright lights all around her. There were a number of faceless beings around her. She believed she was giving something to calm her down. The next thing she remembers was being in another room with several other people that were gathered around a strange man. The man was small, very pale, and had huge oval eyes that were very dark. He also wore an odd black fedora-type hat. When she looked into the being's eyes, she felt an incredible longing to be there. They seemed to contain the whole universe. She thought that the little being was not threatening and seemed to possess great knowledge. The being was apparently sharing his knowledge with the others in the room. The being spoke of humanity's origin and how we had been genetically engineered. He mentioned that The spirit was separate from the body. After she found herself in a long, cold, gray tunnel. In the tunnel, she saw a man she recognized that seemed to be deranged. She was told that the man had been pushed too far. She was then taken into her room where she saw a normal-looking man that seemed to be a medical doctor. Apparently, he performed some gynecological procedure on her. At that point, her memory ended. And this is from Peter Ho Moishe Kalman from The Truth About UFO Abductions.
Yeah, it's a book that they both wrote a while back. Weird.
It's another weird one.
Yeah. A lot of these bedroom visitations are weird. Strange. Okay, now we go into Scotland. The place is Needry Burn, Edinburgh, Scotland, October 1992. The time early evening.
Edinburgh.
Early morning. Edinburgh, okay. Early morning, sorry. The witness, Moira, woke up in the early hours of the morning. She's not sure why. She caught sight of a brilliant white light clearly visible through her bedroom window. She tried to draw her husband's attention to the phenomenon, but he stayed up resolutely asleep. Curious and somewhat apprehensive, she got out of her bed and went to the window to take a closer look. She noticed that the light seemed to be coming towards the window. Her attention was drawn to a tree at the foot of her garden. Poised on one of the thicker branches stood a thing which she described as a giant bird, the size of a man or possibly a human-like figure with wings. So we have here a Mothman in Scotland. Badly frightened, she tried again to wake up her husband, who will not move, and gave her the impression of being in a trance. She climbed into bed, and as she did so, the light came into the room and moved along the wall until he had traveled all the way around back to its starting point. The witness remained in a highly nervous state till as dawn broke, she at last fell asleep. This is from researcher Ron Halliday from his book UFO Scotland.
Well, I can't blame her for remaining in a highly nervous state
for the rest of the night.
Yeah,
but you're gonna like the next one thing. I'm glad you got that next one.
A lot of these bedroom visitations. Earlier, we read about one that happened. I think it was daily in the morning when these 5 creatures would talk to her for half an hour every day, or it said always.
Right.
And these type of encounters literally drive people to drink, not sleep until daylight. I mean, some abductees turn into horrible alcoholics. They're driven to drugs, that kind of thing, because of what they are experiencing.
Unfortunately, yes.
Canadian Spider-Man mentions, so if we were planted here genetically engineered by another species not from Earth, that would mess a lot of people up. They would refuse to believe it and continue on with their beliefs, I assume.
Definitely. You believe what you want to believe, I guess.
So this is from Israel, location Borgata, the date May 30th, 1993, 3 o'clock in the morning, again. Hannah Somech woke up when she heard her dog barking. She got up and went downstairs from her bedroom to the kitchen and looked out the garden through the glass door when she saw her dog literally flying through the air and slam against a wall. Shocked and terrified, she bravely opened the door, but was confronted by an invisible wall. She could not go any further. Then she saw an 8-foot-tall giant in bright coveralls. A thief, she thought. Quote, "You think I am a thief?" she heard inside her head. "What did you do with my dog?" she asked furiously. "He disturbed me, as you do now." The giant spoke telepathically without moving his lips. "I could crush you, but I don't want to. Just leave me alone. I am busy." Close quote. The woman ran back to the bedroom to wake up her husband, but when both came down, the giant had disappeared. In the garden, they found huge footprints, 1 foot 4 inches in length. Later, circles appeared too, again covered by the reddish cadmium-based liquid. After the encounter, Hannah suffered severely from fatigue, headaches, and muscle pain. Although it doesn't mention what happened to the dog.
Hopefully he was okay.
Hopefully, yeah, after getting slammed
Poor
into
dog.
the... Yeah.
Against the wall, poor thing. Yeah, I wonder if this guy really meant when he said that he could crush her.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
8 feet tall, like
Yeah.
a soda can.
Yeah, but would he have done it? That's the thing.
No, but he could have. Yeah.
He could have, yeah. All right, we're
I'm
staying
busy,
in,
kid. Leave me
yeah,
alone. Like a W.C. Fields. Get out of here, kid. You bother me.
yeah. We're staying in Israel here. This is from a place called Rishon LeZion, Israel.
Very good.
Yeah. The end of May 1993.
Guess what time it is?
3 a.m. again. A strong light awakened Batia Shumon, involved in 2 previous similar encounters. She was involved in previous incident. From the kitchen window, looking out, she saw a large mushroom-shaped object with a clear door approaching from the sky. A light was directed at her shoulder, and it felt like a strong punch. Her next memory was of being back in bed watching a tall humanoid wave his hand slowly above her husband's head. He telepathically told her to calm down. He told her they were not here to harm her. While the visitor was in the room, another was touring the rest of the house, not so much on foot as floating upright. His legs did not move. His face was covered in a thin haze that obscured the details somewhat, but Batia recognized both humanoids as the same race of guests that she has seen previously. This time, however, she noted more details. Their hands were human, but their skin was as light as an albino's. Their clothing were also very white, but they shone like neon and were skin tight. Quote. Suddenly, the second visitor appeared opposite her bedroom door, just inside her son's bedroom. He gestured his comrade to come and have a look at what he had found. The first being floated to the boys' room, and both stared transfixed at the boys' aquarium, because he had an aquarium in the room. The visit lasted just a couple minutes when a light shone through the kitchen window, and they disappeared into it. The next morning, all the doors were again open, and a sand-like material previously found, this time described as smelling like sulfur, was spread over the shelves. This is by researcher Barry Shamish in his book Return of the Giants.
And there's that sulfur smell that Joshua Cutchin mentions very often.
Very prevalent.
It's interesting, Albert. A lot of countries are under sort of a imposed silence from their governments, but Israel is not one of them. Israel has several nationwide UFO groups that make these type of reports, and they've never been,
silenced.
Yeah, they've never had any issues with being at the forefront of UFO research.
I do exchange information from a guy that lives in Israel frequently. He's in the humanoid group.
Yeah. Oh yeah, on the Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook page. Yeah. Ron Cohen de Leon.
All right, this one comes from Point Brûlé New Brunswick, Canada, from June of 1993, and the time 1400 hours. The 26-year-old witness, Acadian by nationality, was standing on a field across from his home when he saw 5 people approaching his position from the end of the street in the direction of the cul-de-sac. There were 4 young men and a young girl. The group approached quickly, and the 4 young men continued on toward the cul-de-sac, but the young girl stopped and approached the witness. Standing in front of the witness, the girl asked him, quote, "Do you believe in God?" The witness answered, "Yes, I believe in God." Immediately after he said that, the girl seemed to feel weak and sat down on some wooded pallets next to the witness. He looked at her, and then she got up and got really close to the witness and whispered in his ear, quote, "He who has set Anglicism on earth, he will grasp everything," close quote. Not knowing what to say, the witness stared at her, and she told him that she was married. As she did, noticed a strange logo apparently engraved on her right hand. The witness then started to shake, realizing that she looked human but actually wasn't. She then walked to the nearest cottage and walked up to the front door and suddenly vanished. The witness ran up to the door and checked the doorknob, and the door was closed. The girl was nowhere to be seen. Immediately after that, he ran along the road and the coast to see where the others had gone, but they were nowhere in sight. The witness described the logo as fluorescent black, fluorescent blue, fluorescent green, and fluorescent white. In the white fluorescent area, in the center, there was a figure that resembled a pterosaur. He had never seen a tattoo like that in his life. It was oval in shape, about the size of a dime. The witness was not sure why she whispered it to him and why she whispered the enigmatic message. The whole encounter lasted about 5 minutes. The girl spoke in an accented French-Canadian language, maybe from Quebec. It was obvious that it was not her first language. The men were all white The men were white in all and had short black hair and wore normal clothing, jeans, t-shirts, and tennis shoes. They were about 5'7" in height, and the girl was shorter. She wore the same type of clothing and had shoulder-length auburn-colored hair. The men looked about 35 years of age, and the girl 25. The witness further described the logo as an oval with a diamond shape inside and the pterosaur inside the diamond. He also remembers some yellow colors. Immediately after the encounter, he ran inside his home and sketched the logo.
Yeah, if you click on the link there you can see the logo. I had an image, but I didn't include the image. Very interesting. That pterosaur is like a pterodactyl type.
Mm-hmm.
That's freaky.
Yeah, I got a 404 error.
Oh, it didn't come back?
Yeah, it's not there. Most of these links don't work.
A lot of them are like, I know that group's still active, but maybe that case was removed or something. But I do have the image. Okay.
That's okay.
Let me read the next one that I'll send it to. We go into Poland now. A place called Józefów near Warsaw, Poland, June 1993, time night. The witness, K, also involved in other encounters, was interned at a local hospital where he had most of his experiences. And one night, while lying in bed, he saw familiar lights reflecting on the wall and heard a strange wailing sound. Suddenly, he felt that he could not move. He was facing the wall, but out of the corner of his eye, he could see windows, and then he saw 2 slim figures coming from the direction of the windows. The figures were dressed in tight-fitting gray coveralls, with adjoining hoods and partial face coverings. According to the witness, they resembled divers or ninjas. Quote, the figures had something attached to their waist which resembled a box with cables that ran out to the area behind their heads. They moved in precise fashion like robots, as if they had a task to do. The witness' heart was pounding, and waves of heat passed over his body. He was horrified. One of the figures then grabbed his leg and around the ankles with a cold hand. The second figure, he thinks, since he didn't see it, then slowly moved something very cold up his spine. After a while, the figures were gone, and the witness regained movement. He was, however, shaky and covered in sweat. He lay under the covers all night until the morning. A friend named Agnieszka, who was staying in the adjacent room, told Kay that she was also visited by the same or similar beings and did the same thing to her. They came to her apparently after they had finished with Kay. The main witness described the coveralls as being light gray, and the face covering was transparent in the area of the eyes. The boxes and cables in their coveralls were dark color. Around the same time during the day, Kay saw a giant human-shaped figure. That's the image there, I guess, that we see, walking down the slope of a nearby hill, an area where he had seen a hovering disc-shaped object before. The figure was very muscular, bald, and extremely tall. He wore a white T-shirt and short sleeves and blue trousers. And this is from Polish researcher Casimir Bosowski in the Blogspot there. That one's working because I visited recently.
So we have another graphic here for this next one.
Yeah.
And this is in Lirio near Padova, Pavia, Italy. The date is July 8th of 1993 at 10 a.m. While working on the fields, Father Domenico Casarani saw a
2 meter
tall humanoid. He described it as having a metallic, scaly body, robot-like, and gray in color. It had a large round head and 2 round holes for eyes, from which it emitted a red beam of light. From 2 round holes on its abdomen area, it emitted a beam of blue light. Its whole body appeared to be encased in a yellow glow. Frightened at the sight of the figure, the witness ran home to get his rifle. Upon returning, the witness heard a sort of telepathic message in his mind, which was summed up in these 3 phrases. Quote, "The bullets from your rifle will have no effect on me. There are 14 others just like me in the area. If you attack me, I will strike you with a projectile." Close quote. After this, the robot rose up into the sky and disappeared quickly from view. On the same date, about 8:10 a.m. at a location called Capelle near Lirio, a witness reported seeing a humanoid clad in a metallic gray overall flying over the area during clear skies. That's a weird one.
Yeah, very strange. All right, here we go. The next one is near my location, West Palm Beach, Florida, July 24th, 1993. Time is early morning. And again, the witness, a woman named Pat, I think I talked to her on the phone, involved in other encounters, reported a very disturbing experience which involved not only an alien entity, but also what clearly appeared to be human men and a human environment. In the early morning hours, Pat awoke in a very, very groggy condition. feeling as she's been drugged, and hearing a strange noise very near her, making staccato pss, pss, pss sounds. Then she remembered. Two men had come into her room, carried her outside and into a waiting vehicle, a large military-type truck. She was in a drugged state, merging in and out of consciousness as the truck took off and rode smoothly for 45 minutes to an hour. In her brief, lucid moments, Pat heard the men engage in low conversation that she couldn't understand. She tried to speak up, but her tongue was thick and unwieldy. When the truck turned left onto a rough surface, Pat came awake again in the dark night, caught only a glimpse of the countryside out of a large square front windshield. The truck slowed down and finally stopped with the engine running. Through the window, Pat saw that they were parked next to a large mound or hillside. Incredibly, she saw a large doorway open outward, and the truck pulled inside into the hill. The interior was very dimly lit, but as the vehicle stopped inside, Pat saw a strange being standing as if waiting for their arrival. The being was no more than 3 feet tall, dressed in a black hooded cape. Looking at the being groggily, Pat thought, "What is an Oriental girl doing here?" That's what she thought. And immediately a telepathic message came back from the being. "I know you don't like me." No, Pat thought. No, I don't. I don't want to do this again. But they can't break me because they couldn't do it before. When the truck parked and she was assisted out, stepping a long way down from a high passenger compartment, Pat saw that the area was crowded and dirty, filled with boxes and junk stacked along the wall. In the middle of the large room was a stainless steel table, more human-looking than the table she remembered from alien encounters, and she felt very uneasy. She said, "They wanted me to get on it," she said, "but I don't want to, not that table." But she did get on it, although she didn't remember much about what had happened. The Oriental girl coat hovered around her, moving close and poking at her with some object Pat couldn't see. But she did see the entity's face, close to hers, its skin greenish-gray color. When the creature's eyes blinked and its lids met in the middle, Pat said that the effect was repugnant, reminding her of a lizard. Her next recollection was of getting down from the table and trying to see what the Oriental girl was doing to her. The entity kept moving around Pat, much to her irritation, making an erratic pss, pss, pss sound. Trying to support herself by holding to the table, she moved away from the entity, but it continued to poke at her. Pat was more alert, but still unsteady, and as she circled the table, she stubbed her toe painfully against it. Looking down at her foot, she noticed in surprise that the floor was covered with sawdust. God, she thought, this isn't even a real floor. With a bit more awareness, Pat avoided the being as much as she could, feeling that whatever it was doing, it was sort of a torment. Suddenly, she blacked out, and when she came back to consciousness in her bed, the pss, pss, pss sound was audible there beside her briefly. 2 days later, Pat noticed a slight bruise on her wrist with a red dot or a puncture inside it. And she also saw that one of her toenails was badly chipped, almost as if she has forcibly struck something hard. This of course, is from Carla Turner, the late Carla Turner, PhD, from her book, Taken.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention Carla Turner was a friend of mine. She asked me to bring her to Lawrence back when I was putting on UFO lectures. And by the time I got around to it, I got a postcard asking for help as she had contracted a rare and fast acting type of cancer.
Yes.
Before I could respond, I got another postcard that informed me that she had already passed. I still have the post-it note scrapbooked where she's asking me, Gil, when are you going to bring me to Lawrence? And this show is named in homage after her first book, a popular mass market paperback called Into the Fringe. She self-published Taken, which was a cross-sectional study of 8 women, including herself, that showed many similarities and a few differences between these abductees. And the copy that I just showed you is a new revised edition that's available on Amazon, and I recommend it very highly. It chronicles this incredibly weird high strangeness that occurred to Carla and to her family, and it is absolutely legit. If you are interested in alien abduction and the associated phenomena around it, get this book. All right. So this next one comes to us from Zielonka in Poland. Date July 25th, 1993. Time 10:40 a.m. I'm sorry, 3:40 a.m. We have a lot of 3 o'clock in the morning encounters here.
Yeah.
A married couple living in Zielonka were returned home by taxi from the capital. Suddenly, a light appeared in the sky to their left. At first, it looked like a very large and very bright star. The phenomenon seemed to be about 500 meters from the witnesses and did not make any impression on them. They only became concerned when the beam of light clearly began to follow them. The object began to react to every turn of the car on the route, stubbornly remaining at their side, and after some time it hovered in front of the windshield of their car. When they arrived at their house in Zielonka, they told the driver to park under the thick branches of a large tree, quote, to hide from the object, close quote. After a while, the light or object appeared behind some other trees, about 100 meters from the witnesses. The object was about 3.5 to 4 meters in diameter. It looked like the dome of white and luminous color with a darker top. At its base, the object had 4 circular, very intense lights arranged horizontally. The husband, who had been skeptical about the phenomenon, simply went to sleep. However, the woman took the video camera and filmed the object through the window of the house, leading to the terrace, for about 5 minutes until she ran out of battery. Then, the witness observed the object circling in the sky near the house for about an hour. After a few days, the woman noticed a strange mark on the back of her 4-year-old daughter at waist level, which had not been there before. The color was similar to 2 cyan squares with sides of about 1 centimeter with overlapping corners. On the background, there were 4 small white dots about 1 millimeter in diameter, arranged in the shape of a triangle. The next day, after waking up in the morning, the child asked her mother for crayons, saying that she wanted to draw where she had been all night. The child then drew an object, a saucer with windows. She said that inside the object were 2 aliens. The girl drew a half-circular projection on the left side of the object, saying that it was the entrance. According to the drawing, inside the object, there were 2 seats supported on thin legs with a small backrest. There was also a sort of console or dashboard where one of the aliens was sitting down doing something. The drawing showed that the 2 creatures had large heads, much more distinct from the rest of the body. On the side of the head, one of the aliens wore what appeared to be headphones, or it had large ears. The second alien had huge black eyes. The girl made several drawings, and each time the same basic features were shown, such as the appearance of the creatures or the interior of the vehicle. When asked if it had been a dream, the child firmly answered, "I did not dream about it. I was there." The alarm clock was also found to be about 2 hours behind. And this source is Kazimierz Bzowski, Four Close Encounters Near Warsaw, The Unknown World, #1, 1994. And this is a type G encounter.
Yeah, an abduction that you remembered.
Yeah. Ugh, spooky.
Yes, sir. All right, moving along. We're going to Denmark. It's kind of a cut and dry case. Odense, Denmark, August 1st, 1993, 20:15 hours, May 15. On the southern end of Odense, a witness was cycling on a bicycle path on his way home when he hears the birds chirping up a large tree by the path. He looks up and sees a large object hovering above the trees. The object has three sections. The lower sections is blackish brown in color and is the widest of the sections. Above it, there's a sort of cabin with four windows and on top a smaller cabin with a window. Bright yellow light issues from the windows, and behind the windows you could see 2 to 3 human-like silhouettes. Only the top half of the bodies and heads could be seen. One of the figures appears to be signaling the others with his hand. The object then flies above the bike path slightly ahead of the witness. There, it turns around and at the same time tilts slightly so that the underside is clearly visible. At the bottom of the craft are 3 powerful white lights in a triangle formation, and there's also a kind of perpendicular tube. Meanwhile, the object turns, it descends briefly, but then quickly regains altitude, and now goes the same way it had come. No sound was heard. The witness noted that a pony standing and grazing next to the bike path appeared restless and moved from side to side, which it never did. The UFO then disappeared into the distance. The observation times was approximately 30 seconds. This is from Tony Dodd, or late researcher. He also died of cancer. Late British researcher in his Quest UFO magazine. And this case is your typical type A, which is an entities or aliens seen inside the UFO. I mean, strange, but it's not as weird as some of the other cases.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one is located in northern Tennessee, exact location not given. The date, August 19th, 1993, during the nighttime. The witness, Anne, who lived in an isolated area nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, was alone at home while her husband was away on a hunting trip. That night, Anne found herself restless and unable to sleep, and feeling pretty bored, she arose and moved outdoors to sit in the yard. It was a beautiful night, and she and her pet Chihuahua had been outdoors for more than 3 minutes when the remaining 6 bird dogs that her husband had not taken with him attempted to jump the backyard fence. Frightened, Anne thought that the dogs might break their legs and walked toward the dogs to check on their odd behavior. After taking about 2 steps, she was astonished to see an object shaped much like a car just above the treetops in the backyard. As she observed the object, she noticed a figure looking back at her from the craft. Anne noticed that the slender figure had round, dark eyes and was waving back at her with a hand having 3 fingers and 1 thumb. After watching the object and the being for what she thought was 10 minutes, she returned indoors. Suddenly, she realized it was not minutes but hours that had passed, as it was already 5:30 in the morning.
So definitely some missing time there
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Some
That's
kind of an abduction event.
yeah, unexplored. That's from Northern Tennessee MUFON, September 1984. Alrighty, what do we got next here? We move on to Ireland, a place called Snave.
We can see
SN
your stomach really well, but I can't see your head.
can't. Oh, you know what? This is my. Here we go. No. Okay, Snave, Ireland.
And before we get into that, Michael Beacom has a question at Cardinal Sin. When things in the paranormal don't make sense, we just chalk it up to the unknown. But with abductions, what the literal heck is this all about? What is the meaning? You know, that's a great question. I don't know that that's ever really been answered, although various witnesses, I think Albert will agree, have mentioned different motivations.
They're different agendas. Maybe they're trying to manipulate our genetic makeup. They use our genetic material for their own purposes. Maybe hybrids, creating hybrids, studying. Who knows? Could be many purposes.
And to better answer that question, Michael, I would recommend the work of Dr. David Jacobs, who has followed people from sort of maybe their 20s all the way until they've retired. And the aliens seem to be using them for different things throughout their life. While they are sexually mature enough, they seem to be, as Albert said, doing some kind of hybridization program. And then after, say, the menopausal phase, they seem to be using the same abductees forcibly to tell them how to live among us. There are generally 3 hybrids, or what Dr. David Jacobs calls hybrids, because they look exactly like human beings, but have all the, what he calls, neurological control over humans. And they ask questions that any human being would know, like how to use a stove, or they'll buy furniture and it'll all be stacked up in one room. And they'll ask who gets to watch TV? How long do people watch TV for? What is the purpose of watching TV? And in one case, in his latest book, Walking Among Us, he reports that abductees report many times that they will suddenly wake up walking with one of these hybrids in a Walmart, in a 24-hour Walmart, and they'll be shopping for clothes and things like that. And in one case, once the hybrid had everything that it needed, it just walked past the cashier and sort of smiled and nodded, and the cashier sort of smiled and nodded back. And the abductee said, "That's not cool. You can't just steal stuff." And the hybrid said, "Why not?"
Yeah, there's some people that think that they're trying to supplant or the human race by their, these hybrids are getting accustomed to living here on Earth, so they could take over eventually, and the humans will become, extinct.
Well, or they will insinuate themselves into our society, and
Eventually
rather than an
dominate it.
invasion, rather than an invasion, it'll just sort of be a groundswell, which is kind of terrifying. But once you read his books, Secret Life, The Threat, Walking Among Us, these things sort of develop a pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, this one comes to us from Snave, Ireland, August 31st, 1993, 2 o'clock in the morning. Don Howley, involved in 2 previous incidents, was away on business in Europe. A friend of his, Sean McPartland, volunteered to look after his house for a few days while he was away, and at the same time have a holiday in the Snave and Bantry area. He had arrived at Howley's home with a friend, and all had been quiet for a number of days. On the above date, a dazzling white light woke him up. When he went to the window, he saw that the light was emanating from the same field in which the object and entities were seen by Howley and Robert in March. The object was shaped like a tube, and its appearance and brightness reminded McPartland of a fluorescent light. He judged it to be 40 feet in length, 6 feet wide, and it hovered about 4 feet above the ground. He could make out several lines running through the bright light, indicating that there was a structured object within it. McPartland then went into a cataleptic state for 30 minutes. He became so absolutely terrified and wanted to call to his friend for help, but paralysis prevented him from doing so. He could make out 2 figures approaching the house from the direction of the object in the field, and he watched helplessly as they came up the path toward the front door. He was not sure what happened next, but concentrated all his energy on wishing the figures to go away and for the whole episode to end. He did not know whether this worked or not, or if the entities changed their minds about coming into the house, but the next event he remembered was the entities turning and leaving the path. This event frightened McPartland so much that he and his friend fled from Howley's home early the next morning and sought accommodations elsewhere. The appearance of the menacing individuals in Don Howley's workshop was not their last. In the following months, these unpleasant men came back to him several times. We may never know for certain what they wanted him to build, or whether their mission was to simply make sure that he kept quiet about how he had seen them the previous March. Howley became very guarded about what was happening, and it became difficult to obtain any further pertinent information from him. In 1994, aged just 35, Don Howley was dead.
Doesn't really specify what happened to him. I guess he had previous encounters where I forgot to include there, but he was visited by strange individuals on several occasions, and he saw UFOs in connection to it.
Well, at this point, I am going to bring on our mod, Antiderivative Jill, to help us with our spinner wheel and our giveaway. Hello, Jill.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing wonderful. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Doing well.
Great.
How's our wheel looking?
It is a wheel, and it has 5 contestants on it.
Okay. Well, let's pull that up. And this is my favorite part of the show, when watching my face spin around gives me nausea. So whenever you're ready. All right.
Here's the book.
Mr. M.H.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yes. That's great. Congratulations, Mr. M.H.
Alrighty.
Well, Jill, do you have anything else to to tell us, or any comments about the show tonight? Jill, can you hear me? Earth to Jill. Come in, Jill. Anything to say about our show tonight? I guess not.
Oh, wow. Hello?
You're sort of in and out. I can
you
hear
me
you
now?
now. Yeah.
Sorry about that. My internet went out for a brief moment.
Oh, wow.
But no, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on and helping us with the wheel, and
You're welcome.
congratulations again to Mr. MH.
Yes, congrats. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. We have about 3 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to plug or go on to the last case?
Well, this is the book that Mr. MH won.
Mm-hmm.
And get his information. I'll get out to him. And then tell Mr. McDouglas that his books, they've been returned to me. I need to get a good address from him. For some reason, he's in Quebec and it's in French. Location inconnu. I mean, unknown. And they send back to me. So let's get that fixed up and we can get him his books. All right. So if you want to read one more case,
I'll let you take the last one.
Let me bring it up here a minute.
And Don McDouglas says that he will send his address.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next case. This is after the Irish case. Okay, this is from Brazil, near a place called Manacapuru in the Amazonas state in Brazil. September 1993, the time afternoon, and in an area where strange lights and other phenomena have been frequently reported, a woman, Teresina, involved in a previous encounter also. That area has been like a flashpoint, a bunch of weird stuff. Accompanied by a man named Sebastião, were heading towards the small town located about 36 kilometers from her farm. The two had already walked for about 5 kilometers when they saw next to a pond a set of white clothing or dress spread out on the grass as if waiting for the sun's ray to dry them. Suddenly, from inside the dirty waters of the pond, a totally naked woman emerged. She measured more than 2 meters in height, had whitish blonde hair and very green, and disproportionately large eyes. Like a dull blonde. According to the witnesses, her gaze seemed to penetrate them as if she were examining them. Exiting the lake, the woman went to retrieve her clothing and unceremoniously got dressed, apparently not minding that she was being watched. Very frightened, Teresina clung to the arms of her companion and walked with long and hurried steps to her destination. She only returned to the site later, that same afternoon, when she was told that the strange woman had been traveling the entire region, saying she was on a mission here on Earth. People who saw her said that at no time during the 3 days she stayed in the region, did they see the mysterious woman eat anything. And just the same way she had suddenly appeared, she disappeared. Coincidence or not, after the incident, there was an incidence of cancer in the region. Out of 150 residents, 8 contracted the disease and died within 3 years. This is from researcher Manuel Gilson Mitosa from Brazil. So it sounds like a description of a tall white.
Yeah,
So weird.
it does. And I recall that the tall whites are very frail, and they are fiercely family oriented. They don't want anything to happen to their children.
No, and this is another case with cancers involved here.
Yeah, we've had cancer.
Alrighty.
So if anybody does end up seeing a craft on the ground or nearby, stay in your car. Try not to touch it.
Only fools rush in, remember.
That's right. Fools rush in. All right.
So, Gil, give me the information, and we'll see you hopefully next month.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
All right.
All right.
You take care. We'll
Yeah,
be in touch,
you too.
okay? All right.
And it is Cardinal Sin.